The best birthday gift I ever received was 4 words. We never loved you. My grandmother used to say, the truth always finds a way out. She meant it as a warning. For me, it turned out to be a door. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand what happened on October 14th, you have to understand what the 9 months before it looked like. What most of my life looked like, really, when I'm being honest about it. My name is Claire Thompson. I'm 29 years old. I'm an event planner at a boutique firm in Charlotte, North Carolina, which means I am professionally, clinically, pathologically good at making sure other people's important moments go exactly right. The irony of that is not lost on me. On a Tuesday in January, a Tuesday that looked exactly like every other Tuesday, I was sitting at my desk in the South End office with 4 browser tabs open, a cold cup of coffee to my left, and a phone wedged between my ear and shoulder while I typed. The cold coffee was not unusual. I had not finished a hot cup at my desk since the fall. The tabs were, in order, a vendor portal for a spring wedding I was coordinating, a PDF of the venue's floor plan for that same wedding, a Google Doc with the couple's preferred seating chart, and my parents' insurance company's online customer portal, where I had been on hold for 22 minutes waiting to help my mother reset a password she had locked herself out of 3 times this month. The hold music was a jazz piano arrangement of something I couldn't place. It looped every 45 seconds. I was writing an email to the florist about centerpiece dimensions when the insurance rep picked up. I switched ears without finishing the sentence. The rep, a man named David, based on the automated greeting, walked me through the reset process. It took 4 minutes. I thanked David. I hung up. I finished the email to the florist. I texted my mother. Password reset. You'll get an email with the new login. Save it this time, please. She replied 4 minutes later. Thank you, honey. You're so good at this stuff. I put my phone face down on the desk. My coffee had been cold for an hour by then. I had poured it at 8:15, and it was now 9:47. And somewhere in those 92 minutes, I had answered 6 emails, responded to 2 vendor calls about an upcoming corporate dinner, confirmed the linens order for a wedding in April, reminded my father via text that his blood pressure prescription needed to be refilled before Thursday, emailed my mother her grocery list for Sunday dinner, a dinner she would cancel at 4 p.m. On Saturday, as she often did, citing fatigue, and spent 22 minutes on hold with a password I could have reset for her in under 3 minutes if she had told me the username the first time I asked. I am telling you this not because it was unusual. I am telling you this because it was Tuesday. It was just Tuesday. I picked up the cold coffee and took a sip because setting it down felt like admitting something. Then my phone buzzed. A calendar notification. White background, clean font, the kind of alert that doesn't know it's asking something. Your birthday is in 10 months. Would you like to plan an event? I stared at it. Outside my office window, South End Charlotte was doing what it always did, the light rail running. Someone with a coffee cup walking fast. A crane in the distance adding another floor to another building. Everything moving. Everything fine. I typed back into the notification. Yes. I set my phone down and looked at the cold coffee and thought, okay. Then, I should tell you about my mother before I tell you anything else, because nothing I do makes sense without her in it. Sandra Thompson is 54 years old and has been the center of every room she has ever entered. Not in the way people mean when they say that as a compliment. In the way that a drain is the center of a bathtub, everything moves toward her, whether it wants to or not. She was not a cruel mother in any way that would show up in a list. She fed me, clothed me, came to my school events, took photographs. From the outside, the Thompson family looked exactly like what we were supposed to look like. A split-level house in a suburb north of Charlotte, a father who worked in logistics management, a mother who organized neighborhood charity drives, and a daughter who was good at school and never gave anyone trouble. From the inside, it looked like this. My mother needed to be consulted on every decision. Not asked, consulted. There is a difference. When you ask someone for advice, you can take it or leave it. When someone needs to be consulted, the decision does not happen without them. My choice of college, my first apartment, my job, the color of my kitchen walls, whether I needed the parking garage or if street parking would be fine. I was 22 the first time I made a decision she hadn't previewed, and the silence I got for 3 days after, not anger, just absence, the particular quiet of a woman removing her warmth to demonstrate how cold it gets without her, was its own kind of education. I learned quickly. Most people do. My father, Ray, is 55 and has the demeanor of a man who decided long ago that the most efficient response to his wife was horizontal agreement. He is not a bad man. He loves me in a way that is real but quiet and, above all, undefended. He told me I was smart. He came to my graduations. He also, for 29 years, never once looked at my mother in the middle of something and said, "Enough." That silence was its own kind of choice. I called Jess that evening from my apartment in Noda, sitting cross-legged on my couch with a glass of wine in the January dark against the windows. Jess Morales is 30 years old, has been my best friend since we ended up in the same study group sophomore year of college, and is constitutionally incapable of pretending something is fine when it isn't. It is one of the things I love most about her, and one of the things that made our friendship occasionally exhausting in my 20s. When pretending things were fine was my primary coping mechanism. She asked how my day was. I told her the insurance call, the grocery list, the Sunday dinner that would be canceled on Saturday, the cold coffee. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You know that thing where you keep pouring from a cup?" I said I knew the thing. "At some point you're just pouring air," she said. "Like, literally. You've run dry and you're still doing the motion because you don't know how to stop." I looked out the window at the streetlight on my block. A moth was circling it in slow, determined loops, doing the same useless thing over and over with great commitment. "I set a birthday reminder today," I said. "That's not really what I was talking about," Jess said. "I know," I said, "but it's related." She asked what kind of party I was thinking. I told her I hadn't figured that out yet, but I knew it was going to be mine. Not ours, not the family's, mine. She said okay. She said that sounded good. She didn't ask what I meant by the difference. She already knew. That was January. My birthday was in October. I had 10 months, and I was going to use all of them. Let me tell you about 3 Thanksgivings. 3 promotions. 3 Sunday dinners where I left my parents' house and sat in my car in their driveway for a full minute before starting the engine, staring at the garage door, doing the math on how many more of these I had left. I won't take you through all of them, just the ones that matter. The first was 3 years ago. I had organized Thanksgiving that year, planned the menu, ordered the turkey from a local farm in Concord because my mother had mentioned once, in passing, that she preferred heritage breeds, driven 40 minutes round trip to pick it up, brined it overnight, coordinated side dishes with 2 aunts, set the table with the good linen. 22 people. The kind of meal that, if someone else had done it, my mother would have talked about for weeks. We were finishing the main course when my mother looked down the table at me and said, in the voice she uses when she is being generous, "I am so relieved Claire finally found something stable. I wasn't sure she would." She smiled at the aunt next to her. The aunt nodded, the way people nod when they're not sure what they're agreeing to but don't want to find out. I passed the sweet potato casserole. I did not say, "I have been employed since I was 22, I have never missed rent, I have been promoted twice, and I organized this entire meal while also holding down a full client week at work." I did not say any of that. I refilled someone's water glass and changed the subject, and later, in my car in their driveway, I sat for 58 seconds I counted before I turned the key. The second incident was 14 months ago, which was a Tuesday evening, which was dinner at their house, which was the night I told them I had been promoted to senior event coordinator. My father said, "Congratulations, sweetheart," and that was real. That was his whole heart in 2 words, and I knew it. My mother put down her fork and looked at me with the particular expression she wears when she is about to reframe something for my benefit. "Just make sure work doesn't become your whole personality, honey," she said. "Men can find that kind of thing off-putting." I was 28 years old. I had not asked for her opinion about men. I was not, in that particular moment, thinking about men at all. "Thanks, Mom," I said. "I just want you to be happy," she said, picking her fork back up. Ray looked at his plate. I ate my chicken and thought about the promotion and let the moment do what it was apparently going to do, which was disappear into the ordinary traffic of a Tuesday dinner without a ceremony or a fight or even an acknowledgement that something had just happened. We talked about the weather after that. My mother had heard there might be a dry winter. Those 2 incidents I can tell you about calmly now. The third one I still have to set down carefully, like something with a jagged edge. 6 weeks before my birthday, on a Wednesday afternoon in August, I was in a client consultation in my office. The client was a woman named Brooke Whitfield. She was getting married in April, a $42,000 event at a venue outside the city, garden ceremony, seated dinner for 180 guests. She was organized, decisive, and had referred 2 other clients to our firm. She was, by any professional measure, exactly the kind of client you do not mess up. I was showing her the revised seating chart when my office door opened. Not knocked. Opened. My mother walked in wearing a coral blouse and carrying a canvas tote bag from a local nursery, the kind she takes to the farmer's market on Saturday mornings. She smiled at me, then smiled at Brooke and said, "Oh, I didn't realize you were with someone. I just wanted to drop off those clippings I mentioned." I had not mentioned clippings. I had not asked her to come by. I had not told her where my office was in the context of dropping things off, which is a different piece of information than telling your mother where you work. There is a version of this where I ask my mother to wait outside, and I continue my meeting and nothing changes. I tried to do that version. I said, "Mom, I'm in the middle of a consultation. Can you give me 20 minutes? She said, of course, I'll just." And then she set down the tote bag and turned to Brooke and said, "Are you one of Claire's clients? She is just so talented. I always said she had an eye for beautiful things. Is yours a wedding? My daughter did our neighbor's daughter's wedding 2 summers ago. It was gorgeous. I have photos on my phone if you—" Brooke was polite. Brooke was gracious. Brooke sat through 4 minutes of my mother, showing her photos of a wedding she had not asked to see, and then my mother left warmly, cheerfully, squeezing my shoulder on the way out and saying she'd see me Sunday. Honey and I sat back down across from Brooke and tried to reorient. Brooke moved the remainder of our meeting to the following week so she could check a few things. She called the following Monday to let us know she had decided to go in a different direction with her event planning. $42,000. Gone. 2 hours after my mother stopped by to drop off clippings I had not asked for. I sat with that for a long time after the call. Not the money was a business loss, and businesses have losses. What I sat with was the specific quality of what had just happened. My mother had not come to my office to hurt me. She had come to my office because she had wanted to see me, and she was constitutionally incapable of waiting, and the possibility that I might have something happening at 2:30 on a Wednesday afternoon that was more important than her arrival had not, in any real way, occurred to her. She had not come to destroy something. She had simply come, and the destruction had followed along behind her like a dog on a leash, and she had smiled the whole way through. That night, I called Jess and told her what happened. Jess said a word that I won't repeat here, but that was exactly the right word for the situation. Then she said, "What are you going to do?" I had been sitting on my couch with the birthday reminder still open on my phone from January. 10 months then. 8 months now. I looked at it. "You know that party I mentioned?" I said. "The birthday one. I'm going to plan it," I said. "Properly. The way I plan things." Jess was quiet for a second. She knows me. She has known me for 7 years, and she understood, in that second of quiet, that I was not talking about catering and floral arrangements. "Okay," she said finally. "Tell me what you need." "I need 30 people," I said. "My people. And I need you there." She said she'd be there. That was 6 weeks before my birthday. 6 weeks before I finished planning everything that needed to be in place before October 14th. And when I say everything, I mean everything. The party, the venue, the guest list, the apartment in Seattle, the lease I hadn't signed yet but was about to, the job I hadn't accepted yet but was going to. My mother thought she was coming to a birthday party. She had no idea she was coming to a conclusion. The email from Harrison and Reed arrived on a Thursday morning in late September, 3 weeks before my birthday. I almost missed it. It had been routed to the secondary folder my work account uses for non-client correspondence, and I only found it because I was cleaning out that folder during lunch, the professional equivalent of reorganizing a junk drawer, the kind of task you do when your main tasks are under control and you need something to feel productive. The subject line said, Senior Director Opportunity Charlotte to Seattle. I read it twice. Then I set my phone face down on my desk and ate the rest of my lunch, which was a turkey sandwich I had made at 6:45 that morning because I was trying to spend less money and more time making deliberate choices about small things. The sandwich was good. I finished it slowly. Then I picked up the phone and read the email a third time. Harrison and Reed Events was a firm I knew by reputation, the kind of operation that handled events at a scale my current employer aspired to. Corporate galas, Arts Foundation fundraisers, the kind of work where the budget for flowers alone was more than some weddings I coordinated in a year. They had found me through a mutual contact, a nonprofit director whose annual gala I had run in the spring. The offer was for Senior Director of Client Experience. The salary was 40% higher than what I made now. There was a relocation package. The position started January 1st. I sat with the email for 2 days without telling anyone. On Saturday morning, I went to the coffee shop on my block and ordered a cortado and sat at the small table by the window and opened the housing listings in Capitol Hill, Seattle. I had been to Seattle once, for a conference 4 years ago. I remembered the light, the particular gray-green quality of it, the way it made everything look like it was being filmed through a filter that hadn't been invented yet. I found a 1-bedroom apartment on Olive Way, reasonable rent for the city, large east-facing window, available November 1st. I looked at the photos for a long time. The window faced a quiet side street with a coffee shop on the corner. There was a hardware store across the street. I called the landlord. I asked my questions. I submitted the application. On Sunday evening, I received the approval. I signed the lease digitally, submitted the deposit, and wrote the Seattle address in my planner under a new page I headed simply, Next. On Monday morning, I called Harrison and Reed and accepted the position. Then I called Jess. She was quiet for long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, You're moving to Seattle. January. You accepted a job in Seattle and you're telling me 4 days after the fact. I needed to think. You needed to sign a lease and accept a job offer before you had the conversation, she said. Not an accusation. Just a fact. The way Jess delivers most things. That too, I said. Another pause. I could hear her setting something down on a counter she was cooking, probably. She cooks when she processes things. Are you okay? She said. I think I'm better than okay, I said. I think I'm just not used to it yet. She asked about the party. I told her what I was thinking. The venue was Corkwood, a wine bar in Plaza Midwood that did private events on weekend evenings. I had scouted it 2 months ago. I'm an event planner. I notice venues the way other people notice shoes. The private room held 35 people comfortably, had its own entrance from the side street, good acoustics, low lighting, a bar that did wine flights, and a small food menu. The kind of place that felt like it belonged to the people who were in it, not to whoever had booked it last. I had sent the deposit in August. The room was confirmed for October 14th, a Saturday, 7 o'clock. The guest list was 30 people. Every single one of them was mine. My colleagues from the firm. My friend Marcus, whom my mother considered a bad influence because he had once disagreed with her at a dinner party and not apologized. My college friends Priya and Dana, who lived in Raleigh and had been asking me to plan a visit for months. My neighbor Gerald from the second floor, who was 67, retired, walked his dog past my door every morning at 7:15 and always knocked twice if I hadn't picked up my mail. Sandra and Ray were on the list, as guests, not as co-hosts, not as organizers, not as people whose opinions on the venue I had solicited or would be soliciting. Guests. You're inviting her, Jess said. It was not a question. Yes. Why? I thought about how to answer that. Because if I don't invite her, I said, I spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had, and because I want witnesses. Jess set something down on the counter again. Witnesses, she said. 30 people who know me, I said, who know my work, my life, what I've built. 30 people who know what they're seeing when they see it. There was a particular quality to what I was describing that I did not say out loud, because I did not need to. Jess and I have been friends for 7 years. She understood that I was not setting a trap in any dramatic sense. I was not planning to confront my mother, expose her, or produce evidence against her. I was simply building, around myself, a room full of people who would bear witness to whatever happened. And if nothing happened, if Sandra arrived and sat quietly and raised a glass and said happy birthday, then I would have had a lovely party and moved to Seattle in November with no drama and no guilt and a clean exit. But I knew Sandra. What do you need from me? Jess said. Be there. See it. That's all. I can do that, she said. Claire, I know, I said. I just want to say it. You don't have to. You deserved better than this, she said. That's all I wanted to say. I looked at the planner on my desk, the page marked next, the Seattle address in my handwriting. Outside my window, the September light was doing something warm and slanted against the brick building across the street. The last of the summer, trying to get one more word in before it gave way to fall. I'm starting to think so too, I said. 3 days later, my mother called to offer help with the party setup. I told her the venue handled setup. She said she could bring centerpieces. I told her there was no need. I just want to be useful, she said, in the voice she uses when useful means present and in charge. You're a guest, Mom, I said. Guests don't set up. There was a silence. Not a long one, just the half-second adjustment a person makes when the conversation has gone in a direction they didn't anticipate. Then she said, of course, and told me she'd see me on the 14th, and we said goodbye. I set the phone down and made a note in my planner. Sandra called set up, redirected. And then I went back to the Harrison and Reed onboarding paperwork, which I had been working through in the evenings, a little each night, like someone unpacking a new place one drawer at a time. 8 days before the party, my mother called to offer help with the decorations. I want to be precise here, because precision matters when you're describing a pattern. She did not ask if I needed help with decorations. She called to offer it, which is a different grammatical construction and an entirely different social contract. Asking implies the other person has the option of declining. Offering implies the other person simply hasn't realized yet what they need. The venue handles the setup, I told her. There's nothing for you to bring. I could do centerpieces, she said. I've been doing them since before you were born. Hydrangeas are so beautiful in October, and I know a woman at the farmer's market who gets them in the most gorgeous, dusty blue. There are already centerpieces, I said. The venue includes them. A pause. They're not going to be personal, though. They don't need to be personal, I said. It's a wine bar, not a family reunion. Another pause, slightly longer. I just want to help. I know, I said. You're a guest. Being a guest is the help. She said of course, she understood completely. She would see me on the 14th. The call ended warmly, as her calls almost always do, with the particular warmth of a woman who is internally filing something for later. 5 days before the party, my father called. Ray Thompson calling me directly, without a relay through my mother, meant one of two things. Either he had a specific practical question only I could answer, or he was conducting diplomacy. I knew which one this was within 4 seconds. Hey, sweetheart. That was the opening. Hey, sweetheart means he's been asked to call. Hey, Dad. Your mother's a little. She mentioned she'd offered to help with the party and you said no. I said the venue handles the setup. There's nothing for her to do. Right. He paused. I could hear the television in the background, a sports channel, the specific murmur of a game he was watching while doing something else. She just feels a little, you know how she is. I did know how she was. I had been knowing how she was for 29 years. I waited to see if there was more. She's excited, he said. About the party. She's been talking about it. I thought about the lease in Seattle, the Harrison and Reed onboarding documents, the page in my planner marked next. I thought about the first box I hadn't packed yet but was going to pack that weekend. I thought about my mother talking about the party to her friends, probably describing it as something she had been involved in planning, the way she described most things I did. "I'm glad she's excited," I said. "She'll have a good time." "Yeah," Ray said. "She will." Another pause. "You doing okay?" This was Ray's version of saying something. He couldn't say the larger thing, he never could, but he could ask the smaller thing and mean the larger one, and I had learned over the years to hear it for what it was. I said I was doing well. He said, "Good, good." We said goodbye. After I hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a moment, thinking about my father. About the 29 years of sideways diplomacy and smoothed edges, and you know how she is. About all the times the larger thing had gone unsaid because saying it would have required a kind of courage he didn't have or didn't believe he had, which amounted to the same thing. He loved me. He also, for my entire life, loved his peace more. I didn't know exactly what to do with that. I put it on a shelf and left it there. 2 days before the party, she tried one more time. This call was different. The helpful tone was still there, my mother is consistent, but underneath it, if you knew what to listen for, the edges were fraying slightly, the way fabric does when it's been pulled in the same direction for too long. She wanted to know the guest list. Not all of it, she said, just to have a sense of who would be there. I told her it was mostly people from work and some college friends. She asked if Marcus would be there. I said yes. She made a small sound, not quite a sigh, not quite a word that communicated her opinion of Marcus without technically expressing it. Then she asked about speeches. "Is there a program?" she said. "Is someone saying something? There should probably be a toast." "There's no formal program," I said. "It's a party. Families say something at birthdays," she said, and her voice had shifted slightly, the way a key shifts when it's trying to find a lock. "It's just natural." I could say a few words. Nothing elaborate. "Mom." I said her name in a way that was not unkind but was not negotiable. "It's not that kind of party." The silence that followed was 3 seconds long. I know because I counted, the way I count things when I need to stay in my body and out of my head. "All right," she said finally. "I'll see you Saturday," I said. 7 o'clock. "We'll be there," she said. After I hung up, I wrote in my planner. Second call, party control, redirected. Then I wrote beneath it, in smaller letters, a note to myself. "She's afraid of something. That's what this is." I had been thinking about what Ray said to me 6 days later, which I didn't know yet was coming, but I already sensed it in the calls. Not cruelty, fear. My mother had built her identity around being necessary to the people she loved, and there was something happening in her daughter that she could feel but not name, like a change in air pressure before weather. She couldn't see the Seattle lease. She couldn't see the job offer. She could only see a birthday party she had not been asked to help plan, a guest list full of people she didn't know, a daughter who kept answering her calls warmly and telling her nothing. I did not feel sorry for her. But I understood her, which is a different thing. The night before the party, I packed one box, just one. Books I wouldn't need. For the next month, a handful of novels I'd been meaning to reread, a collection of essays by a writer I liked. The photography book Gerald from the second floor had lent me 6 months ago, and that I needed to return before I moved. I folded the flaps and ran the tape across the top and wrote on the side in black marker, "Seidel Books." I set it by the front door where I would see it in the morning. My apartment was quiet. The street outside was doing its usual Saturday night eve thing. Some laughter from the bar 2 blocks over, a car with its music up sliding past. I made a cup of tea I didn't finish, and sat on the couch and thought about nothing in particular. At 10:15 I went to bed. I slept for 8 hours straight, which, if you knew what tomorrow was going to hold, might sound strange. But I had been planning for 10 months. Everything that needed to be done was done. The lease was signed. The job was accepted. The deposit on Corkwood had cleared in August. The guest list had confirmed. Jess would be there. There was nothing left to prepare. I turned off the light and closed my eyes, and let Saturday come. I arrived at Corkwood at 6:15. The party didn't start until 7, but I'm an event planner and arriving 45 minutes early to a venue is not something I do consciously, it's more like a reflex, the way some people check the stove twice before leaving the house. I walked the room, private entrance on the side street, exactly as I remembered. Warm overhead lighting, not too bright, the kind that makes people look like themselves on a good day. My playlist was already running through the speakers. I had sent it to the venue manager the week before. The wine flights were staged on each table, 4 glasses in a row, the cards handwritten by someone on their staff. Everything was where it was supposed to be. I stood in the middle of the room for a moment and looked at it. 31 chairs around 5 tables. Mine was at table 3, facing the door. Because I always put myself where I can see the entrance, another professional habit I stopped being able to turn off years ago. The room smelled like wood and candle wax and something faintly floral from the kitchen. Outside, the Plaza Midwood street noise came through as a low murmur. A city doing its Saturday evening. This was mine. I had built this from nothing, the way I built everything, one confirmed detail at a time, one deposit cleared, one email replied to. I had done it for other people's events for 7 years. I had done it for myself exactly once. I straightened a wine glass that didn't need straightening and went to wait by the door. They came in the way my people always do in 2s and 3s, a little uncertain of the room until they saw me, and then immediately not. Marcus arrived first, which surprised me, since Marcus is constitutionally opposed to punctuality. He hugged me and told me I looked like someone who had made a decision, which was not entirely inaccurate. Priya and Dana came together from Raleigh, already halfway through a story about the drive-up that they finished telling me simultaneously in 2 different versions. Gerald from the 2nd floor arrived in a sport coat I had never seen him wear, carrying a card in a yellow envelope, and told me my apartment had been very quiet this week, and I said yes, I'd been busy, and he said he figured. My colleague Rachel brought her husband and a bottle of wine from a vineyard in Walla Walla that she said I would need later. No particular reason. 30 people. By 7:30, the room had its own sound overlapping conversations. Laughter, the particular warmth of people who are glad to be somewhere. I moved between tables the way I always move at events. Briefly, attentively, making sure each person felt seen without letting any single conversation take hold of me long enough that I stopped being able to read the room. Jess arrived at 7:20 and found me at the bar. She ordered a glass of the Pinot and stood next to me and surveyed the room with the calm of someone who has been briefed and is now on duty. "You good?" she said. "Yes," I said. She nodded once, and that was the end of that conversation. Sandra and Ray arrived at 7:22. They were the last guests to arrive, which I noted without reading anything into it. Sandra was wearing a silk blouse in deep burgundy that was considerably more formal than the venue called for, and she had her hair done in a way she reserves for occasions she considers important. Ray was in a blazer and had remembered to shave, which he does not always do on weekends. My mother walked in and her eyes moved across the room the way they always do in any new space, quickly, cataloging. She was looking for people she recognized. She found none, not one face she knew, not one person who turned at her entrance. The room did not reorganize itself around her arrival the way the room she is accustomed to do. I watched this happen. I watched her smile adjust by a fraction, still present, still warm, just slightly recalibrated. Ray found me immediately and hugged me properly, the way my father hugs me when it's just the 2 of us and he doesn't have to perform it for anyone. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," he said into my shoulder. It was real. I held on to it for a second. Sandra hugged me next and said I looked beautiful and that the room was charming. I thanked her. I brought them to table 4 and introduced them to the 2 colleagues seated there, a woman named Patricia and her partner, both of whom were gracious and made conversation easily. I left them settled and moved back into the party. For the next hour, I did not watch my mother. I didn't need to. After 7 years in event planning, you develop a peripheral awareness of the room, a map of where the energy is, where it's flagging, where something is shifting. My mother was at table 4, and the energy there was pleasant but contained. Sandra tried several conversations. Most were brief. The people in that room knew me, they knew my work, my life, how I operated. They had no shared frame of reference with my mother, and she had nothing to offer them except the fact of being my mother, which in that room, on that night, was not a credential that carried weight. I saw her wine glass refilled twice. I saw Ray put his hand on her arm at one point and lean in to say something. I saw her nod and straighten. At 8:30, I cut the first of the birthday cakes, Gerald's idea. He had coordinated with the venue without telling me. A small chocolate layer cake with a single candle, because he said one was sufficient and anything more was showing off. Everyone sang. I blew out the candle. Marcus made a toast that was 3 sentences long and entirely accurate, which is the only kind of toast worth making. At 8:41, in my peripheral vision, I saw my mother push back her chair. My body registered it before my mind did. My hands, which had been holding a fork and a small plate, went still. Not stiff still. The way a room goes still right before something. Sandra stood up. She didn't tap a glass. She didn't ask for attention with a word. She simply stood up and raised her voice. And in a room where 30 people were having 30 conversations, it cut through the way a certain kind of voice always does not, because it was loud, but because it had decided, can everyone take a moment? She was looking at the room, not at me. Her voice was the one she uses when she is about to say something she has convinced herself is brave. I've been sitting here all evening watching everyone tell Claire how wonderful she is, and I think she paused, something moving across her face that I could not name and did not try to. I think it's time for a little honesty. Real honesty. The kind families owe each other. The room had gone quiet. Completely. The way rooms do when something shifts from celebration into something else, and nobody is sure yet what that something else is going to be. She looked at me then. "We never really loved you," she said. "Not the way a parent should. I don't know why. I've thought about it and I don't have an answer. But I think you deserve to hear the truth." 30 people. Not one sound. I did not look at Ray. I looked at my mother. She was still standing, still holding her wine glass, and in her face I could see the thing underneath the thing, the fear that had been building through every phone call, every redirected offer, every unanswered question about a guest list she didn't recognize. She had come here to take something back. She had aimed at the center of the room and fired, and now she was waiting to see what fell. I set down my fork. I set down my plate. Slowly, without hurry. 3 seconds. I stood up. I looked at her the way you look at something you have been trying to see clearly for a very long time and finally can. "Thank you for the honesty," I said. Then I reached behind my chair and picked up my jacket. I didn't put it on, I just held it. The way you hold something when you know you're about to need it but you're not running. I looked across the room at Jess. She was already looking at me. We did not need words for what passed between us. We had been friends for 7 years. I walked to the door. I pushed it open onto the side street, and the October air came in, cool and particular, smelling like the city and something burning somewhere distant, leaves maybe, or a fireplace on someone's block. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I sat in my car for 5 minutes before I did anything else. The engine was off. The dashboard clock said 8:57 p.m. The side street was quiet. Corkwood's private entrance opened onto a block that doesn't get much foot traffic on Saturday nights, most of the action being on the main stretch 2 blocks over. I could hear faintly the music from the bar down there, something with a steady beat, indistinct from this distance, like a pulse. I did not cry. Not then. I sat with my hands in my lap, not on the steering wheel, just in my lap, and I looked at the brick wall of the building across the alley, and I thought about my grandmother. She used to say the truth always finds a way out. I had thought about that sentence 100 times over the years, mostly as a warning, something to be careful of, a reminder that things kept down long enough eventually rise on their own. But sitting in that car in that particular quiet, I understood something different about it. Sometimes the truth coming out isn't a disaster. Sometimes it's just the last thing that needed to happen before you could go. I thought about Ray's face. Not Sandra's eye had watched Sandra. What I kept returning to was Ray, who had been at table 4 when his wife stood up, and whose face, when it happened, had not shown surprise. It had shown the look of a man who has been watching a particular door for a long time and has finally seen it open. Not relief, exactly. Something closer to the recognition of inevitability. He knew. He had known something was coming, and he had not stopped it. And that was the thing I was sitting with in the dark of that car. Not the thing my mother had said, but the thing my father had not done, which was the longer story, the one that went back further and cost more. My phone lit up on the passenger seat at 9:04 p.m. Ray's name on the screen. I watched it ring. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail. At 9:07 p.m. Sandra. I watched that one too. At 9:09 p.m., a text from my colleague Rachel, who had been at the party. Are you okay? Where did you go? That was insane. Call me. At 9:12 p.m., Ray again. At 9:18 p.m., a number I didn't recognize, which turned out, when I checked it later, to be my cousin Aaron, whom I had not spoken to in the better part of a year, and who had apparently heard from someone already, which told me everything I needed to know about how quickly this had begun to move. I started the car. I drove to Jess's apartment in Dilworth, which took 11 minutes at that hour. I parked on the street. I went upstairs. She was already home. She had left the party shortly after I had, which I learned later was not according to any plan between us, but simply because after I walked out, the room had gone strange in a way that made staying feel like a choice she wasn't willing to make. She opened the door when she heard me on the stairs, and she did not say anything, which was exactly right. She made tea. I sat at her kitchen table. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. She told me what had happened after I left. I'll tell it the way she told it to me briefly, because she is not a person who elaborates when the facts are sufficient. Sandra had stayed standing for about 30 seconds after I walked out. The room was silent for most of that. Then someone at table 1, a woman named Danielle, who works in my firm's operations department and who I have known for 4 years, stood up, walked to table 4, and said to Sandra, in a voice that was quiet enough to be polite and clear enough to be heard, "You just told your daughter you don't love her. At her birthday party, in front of 30 people. I want to make sure you understand what you did." Sandra had started to respond. Ray put his hand on her arm. Danielle went back to her table. Over the next 20 minutes, several people left. Not dramatically, they said their goodbyes to each other, collected their jackets, and went. The ones who stayed finished their wine and talked in the careful way people talk after something has cracked the room open. A few approached Ray separately to say goodnight. Nobody approached Sandra. By 9:30, according to Jess, the room was mostly empty. The venue staff moved around the tables with quiet professionalism, clearing glasses, the way they do when an event has ended without announcement. Sandra cried at some point. Jess did not specify when. We sat at Jess's kitchen table until past midnight. She drank tea. I drank water, and then more water, and then a glass of wine she opened without asking and set in front of me. And I drank that too. At some point she asked, "Are you okay?" I thought about it properly before answering, because she deserved a proper answer. "I think I'm going to be," I said. "I'm not sure I'm there yet." She nodded. That was enough for her. My phone kept lighting up on the table between us. I had turned the volume off in the car. We watched it glow and dim, like something trying to get the attention of a room that had decided to look elsewhere. Ray. Sandra. Ray again. My Aunt Linda, who lives in Greensboro, a number I didn't recognize. Ray. At 10:41, a name I hadn't expected. Aunt Carol. I looked at it for a moment. Then I turned the phone face down. Not yet. I knew what that call contained. I had known Carol my whole life, and I knew she would say the right things, and I wasn't ready for the right things yet. I needed one more night to sit with the wrong ones. "You should sleep," Jess said eventually. "I know," I said. I didn't move. She brought me a blanket from the hall closet and set it on the couch. She turned off the overhead light and left the lamp in the corner on, the one with the warm bulb. She went to her room. I lay down on the couch and looked at the ceiling. Outside, the city did what it always does, kept going. indifferent and continuous, full of its own business. Somewhere out there, in a wine bar in Plaza Midwood, the staff was stacking chairs. In a house in the northern suburbs, my mother was either still crying or had stopped. My father was either sleeping or lying in the dark looking at his phone. In a folder on my laptop at home, there was a signed lease for an apartment on Olive Way in Seattle, Washington. The lamp in the corner put out just enough light to see by. I closed my eyes. In the morning, Jess made coffee and we sat at her kitchen table again, and this time I talked. Not about what my mother had said. I had made a decision somewhere in the night, lying on that couch, that I was not going to spend the hours after the party cataloging the wound. I knew what she had said. I had been present for it. What I needed to talk about was the part I didn't want to look at directly, the part that was mine. I knew, I said, not specifically, but in general. I've known for years what she was capable of. Jess wrapped both hands around her mug. I stayed anyway, I said. 10 years of staying, of managing and redirecting and making it work. I told myself it was patience. That's not what it was. What was it? Jess said. I had thought about this in the night. I had a word for it by morning. Fear, I said. Leaving felt like admitting I'd been wrong to stay, which meant everything I'd spent 10 years managing would have been a waste. So I kept staying to prove it wasn't. Jess looked at her coffee. That's mine, I said. That part's mine. She nodded. Not to agree that it was my fault, to agree that I was seeing it clearly. There is a difference, and she knew I knew the difference, so she didn't explain it. That's what 7 years of friendship looks like. The things you don't have to say. I picked up my phone. 41 notifications. I started reading. This is what 53 missed calls looks like from the inside. 9 from Ray, spread across Saturday night and Sunday morning. 4 from Sandra. 2 from my cousin Aaron. 1 each from my Aunt Linda, my mother's friend Patricia, and a number I eventually identified as belonging to a woman from Sandra's church who had apparently been told something by someone. 1 from Danielle, which said only, "That took guts. Call me whenever." And then the text, Ray, at 11:47 p.m. Saturday. Please call me when you can. Your mother is very upset. Ray, at 2:09 a.m. Sunday. The insurance renewal notice came in. I'm not sure which account it goes to. Do you know the login for the portal? I read that one twice. The insurance portal. The one I had reset the password for in January. On a Tuesday. On hold for 22 minutes while I ate lunch at my desk. Ray, at 9:14 a.m. Sunday. I found your mother's doctor appointment in the calendar. The one on Thursday. Did you schedule that? I didn't know it was there. Sandra, at 11:02 a.m. Sunday, a voicemail which I did not listen to yet. I let it sit. Ray, at 1:30 p.m. Sunday. I'm sorry, Claire. I'm sorry I didn't stop her. I don't know if that helps. It helped a little and not enough, which is probably the most accurate thing I can say about most of what my father has offered me over the years. I set the phone down. Jess had been reading her own phone, giving me space, and she looked up. Bad? She said. My dad texted at 2 in the morning asking for the insurance portal login, I said. She put her phone down. He didn't know the appointment existed, I said. The one I set up for my mother in August. He found it in the calendar and didn't know what it was. The thing about that text, the thing I had to sit with, the thing that was not dramatic and was somehow harder for not being dramatic, was this. I had been doing those things for so long that the people I did them for had stopped registering that they were being done. The portal, the appointment, the prescription reminder, the grocery list, the insurance renewal, none of it had a name in our family. It was just the way things ran, the way the heat turns on without anyone thinking about the furnace. They were going to have to think about the furnace now. The 53rd call came at 11:18 on Sunday morning. I know because I had been counting, not obsessively, just in the way you track a thing when you're waiting to see where it lands. Aunt Carol. I looked at her name on the screen for a full ring. Then I picked up. I'm not calling to ask you to come back, she said. That was the first thing she said. No hello, no how, are you just that? Which told me she had been thinking about exactly what to say and had decided to lead with the thing that mattered. Okay, I said. I just needed you to know that what she said is not true. Her voice was steady. She had the voice of a woman who had been watching her younger sister for 50 years and had a great many opinions she had mostly kept to herself. It has never been true, and I don't know if that helps anything. It helps some, I said. A pause. Then, are you going somewhere? I looked at the window. October light coming through the glass, thin and particular. Seattle, I said. The first time I had said it out loud to anyone in my family. She was quiet for a moment. Good, she said. Just that. Good. We talked for a few more minutes about nothing consequential. I told her I would be in touch. I meant it. That evening I went home. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. The box marked Seattle Books was still by the front door where I had left it Friday night. I looked at it for a moment. Then I opened a new email, addressed it to my manager and CC'd HR, and typed, "Please accept this as my formal notice of resignation, effective 2 weeks from today, in connection with a relocation to Seattle, Washington." I read it once. I sent it. I closed the laptop and sat in the quiet of my apartment. The furnace clicked on that small mechanical sound it makes when the temperature drops below a threshold I had set years ago and never changed. The heat came up through the floor vents. I made dinner. I ate it at the table, without my phone. Outside, it was the kind of October night that feels like a closing, not sad, just complete. The way a chapter feels when you've turned the last page and the next one hasn't started yet. I washed my dish. I went to bed. I made coffee on a Tuesday morning in November and drank all of it before it went cold. That is a small thing. I know it's a small thing. But I had not done it in years, made coffee and stood at a window and let it be hot the whole way through, and standing in my kitchen on Olive Way with the gray-green Seattle light coming through the east window, I noticed it. I let myself notice it. The apartment was half unpacked. Boxes along one wall, books stacked on the floor, waiting for shelves I hadn't bought yet. A single chair at the kitchen table that I had decided was sufficient for now. From the east window I could see the side street below, the coffee shop on the corner, the hardware store across from it. A man walked a very small dog in a yellow raincoat. Not the man, the dog. I finished my coffee and went to work. Let me tell you what happened, without drama, because that's how it happened. Sandra sent a voicemail 3 days after the party. It was 4 minutes long. I listened to it once standing in my old apartment in Noda with a half-empty box open on the floor beside me. She said I had embarrassed the family. She said she had only been trying to be honest. She said she hoped I understood someday that she had done what she did out of love. Her voice broke twice and recovered both times. I deleted it. Ray sent a text 6 days after. "We're managing. I hope Seattle is good." I replied, "Thank you, Dad. That was the whole of it." What managing looked like, I learned in pieces. Ray called the insurance company's customer service line and spent an hour on hold to reset the portal password, the same portal I had been accessing on their behalf for 3 years. He found, in a folder in my old desk that I had left behind, a file labeled Medical Ray containing 2 years of his blood pressure readings, prescription refill dates, and contact information for his cardiologist. He had not known the folder existed. He called to tell me he had found it, and in his voice when he said it was something I recognized as a man understanding, for the first time, the dimensions of a room he had been living in. He did not say thank you. I did not need him to. Sandra's doctor appointment on the Thursday after the party was missed. Nobody called to reschedule it. I know because I checked once the patient portal I had set up for her 2 years ago. I checked it, and then I logged out and did not go back. In the weeks after the party, 3 people from the church community reached Sandra with questions. One of them had a daughter who worked with someone who had been at Corkwood that night. I don't know exactly what was said to Sandra or how she answered it. I know only that the version of herself she had been presenting to that community, the devoted mother, the woman who sacrificed, had a different shape now. Not destroyed, just different. In communities where reputation is held like currency, a different shape is enough. Aunt Carol called twice more. We talked about her garden, a trip she was considering to Portugal, a novel she had read and wanted to recommend. The first real conversations I had had with anyone on that side of the family in years. Conversations that had nothing to do with managing anything. They were just conversations. I had forgotten how much I missed those. On a Wednesday, in my second week at Harrison and Reed, a senior director named Margaret stopped by my desk and asked if I would be willing to lead a new client account, a foundation that held an annual gala for 300 people. She said she had heard I had done exceptional work in Charlotte and she wanted to see what I could do with more room. I said yes. I said it the way you say yes when the answer has been ready for a long time and the question has finally arrived. On a Thursday morning, I was standing at the window of my new office on the 8th floor, looking out over Capitol Hill and, beyond it, the gray-green expanse of Puget Sound. A ferry was crossing in the distance, slow and steady, making its way from one shore to the other with the particular patience of things that know exactly where they're going. My phone buzzed on the desk. Jess, how's Seattle? I looked at the ferry. I looked at the sound. I looked at the city spread out below me, full of people I hadn't met yet, work I hadn't done yet, mornings I hadn't had yet. I typed back, quiet. I like it. I set the phone down and turned back to the window for one more moment. Outside, the light was doing something complicated with the water, the way light does in that city, layered and shifting, like it couldn't make up its mind between gray and silver and just kept trying both. Then I turned back to my desk and I got to work. I've thought a lot since then about what my grandmother used to say, that the truth always finds a way out. She was right. It does. The part she didn't mention, the part I had to figure out on my own, is that sometimes the truth coming out isn't the end of something. Sometimes it's just the door finally opening. And I have learned, in the months since October 14th, that the question worth sitting with is not what happens when the people who were supposed to love you finally say what they couldn't say. The question is what you do with the open door, how long you stand in the frame, whether you step through. At what point does holding a family together stop being love and start being the reason they never learn to hold themselves? I don't have a clean answer. I'm not sure there is one. But I know what I did when the door opened. I walked through it, and I didn't look back. Here is what Claire's story teaches you, if you let it. The people who take you for granted do not realize what you do, not because they are blind, but because you have made it too easy for them not to see. When you handle everything quietly, when you absorb every intrusion and redirect every attempt at control without complaint, you are not being patient. You are making a choice, and that choice, repeated long enough, becomes invisible. To them, and sometimes to yourself, you may know someone like Sandra. You may have been managing someone like her for years, deflecting, smoothing, staying one step ahead of the next intrusion. And if you have, I want to ask you something honestly. How long have you been calling that patience, when the more accurate word might be fear? Because here is the truth Claire had to learn the hard way. Some people only understand your value when you are no longer there to provide it. The login they never needed to know. The appointment they never knew existed. The life you were quietly holding together while they took credit for the peace. If someone in your life has ever made you feel like you were too much, or not enough, or simply invisible, drop a comment. Tell me your story, because you are not alone, and some doors are worth walking through.